how do rabbis determine halakha? And why is it that one question can potentially have multiple answers? At the end of the day, halakha is a legal system. It is a divinely inspired and Torah principled legal system. But as a legal system, and one that has been developed and has evolved at the hands and by the endeavors of human beings, again, divinely inspired human beings, but human beings nonetheless, it is subject in some ways to the same laws of jurisprudence that other legal systems are subject to. As a historian who studies how people are perceived and treated in the law and by other people, specifically my research was in the Jews of medieval Ashkenaz. And so I was studying Jews who were living in the Middle Ages under Christians in France and Germany, right? And I was studying how minorities were perceived and how they were treated. And by minorities, or what we call in the field subalterns, I mean women and children and lepers and physically and mentally challenged people, how they were perceived and treated within the law and by other people. And I discerned that there were three major factors that went into how they were perceived and treated. One was prior legacies, meaning whatever the community inherited from their predecessors regarding women and children and lepers and physically and mentally challenged people, whatever image they received and whatever laws they received from the people that came before them would impact how they would perceive and treat those people within and outside of the law. So when we're talking about Torah and we're talking about Judaism, the prior legacy would be the Tanakh and the Talmud and the writings of the Gaonim and Rishonim and the Achronim that came before us. So prior legacies are extremely important when poskim are rendering piskei halacha, prior legacies. Number two is influence. Influence also often impacts how people are perceived and treated inside and outside of the law. So that the Jews who were living in France and Germany under Christians would perceive and treat women, children, etc., sometimes in accordance with how the larger Christian community was perceiving and treating them, because they were influenced by them, right? And so influence is a factor. A third factor is the needs of the community. Whatever the needs of the community are can impact how lawmakers render legal decisions, right? So if the needs of the community are that women should be kind of put down, suppressed, or as in the case with the Jews of medieval Ashkenaz, that women should be upheld and seen as powerful and capable, because women in Ashkenaz were, and this is just by way of example and by illustration, women of Ashkenaz were often working behind the scenes when their husbands were away on business. They were the moneylenders. They were not only running the household, but they were running the business back home, right? So there was this economic need for them to be well-read and well-versed in business practices. And so women were perceived as very capable and very powerful in those areas. And kind of legal decisions followed those kind of needs. So that's why when you have a posek answering a shaila, he might ask the person, the questioner, what exactly, I want to know details about what's happening here, because he wants to try to ascertain what the needs are here. And when a community is asking a communal question, very relevant question that a community might ask today is a question of mechirat chametz. Can we sell our chametz? And the answer for a community might be different than an answer for an individual, because community needs are different than individual needs. So basically, at the end of the day, these three factors, the prior legacies, influence, and the needs of the community, go into legal decision making. Now, when it comes to piskei halacha, to Judaism specifically, the two major ones, I would say, are the prior legacies and the needs of the community. And different poskim often emphasize or focus on one more than the other. So that somebody who's emphasizing prior legacies and looking at what it says in the Rishonim and the Gemara and emphasizing that might be oriented a little bit differently when he's rendering his psak than somebody who's emphasizing the needs of the community or the needs of the person that's in front of them. Now, the greatest poskim, the most, the ones with the most mastery, the best poskim, are the ones that achieve a synthesis to whatever extent possible, right? The more that you have a synthesis in balancing out the prior legacies with the needs of the community, the kind of more complex and well-rounded and multifaceted the answer is. Right? But you get a sense when we're asking questions about difference when it comes to rendering halakha and what goes into halachic decision making, you get a sense from kind of what I'm saying here and pointing to these two factors, the prior legacies and the needs of the community, that poskim are on a spectrum. And some of them lean more towards one and more towards the other when they're rendering their piskei halacha. And that's sometimes why you might get nuance and difference and diversity within piskei halacha and halachic decision making.